Oh, you were able to connect.
Yep, I'm on. Yeah, thank
Good.
you. Thank you.
Good.
Where's everybody, Maria?
No, I'm here, ABC, and you're here. And now, Chaim is here.
Hello.
Hello. And Harold is here.
Harold, was is er dort?
Chocolate chip cookie.
Can't share with all of them.
It's a little far to go.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. What happened to Ernie?
No idea.
I don't know.
There he is. Are we on page 270?
271.
Okay, got it.
Right. So this is an important sugya, Chazar Sashat. We've been dealing in general with Tefillah B'Tzibur. But now specifically is when the Chazan repeats the Shemona Esrei. In the previous Shir on Shemona Esrei, we have focused on different halachas related to the recitation of the silent Shemona Esrei, including who's obligated, the proper position for reciting it, the proper kavanah necessary for reciting it. This year, we will deal with the Chazar Sashatz, the repetition of the Shemona Esrei by the Shliach Tzibur, following the silent Shemona Esrei, when one prays with the minyan. So first of all, what's the reason that we have a Chazar Sashatz? The Mishnah Rosh Hashanah 33b records a machlokas as to the purpose of Chazar Sashatz. According to the first opinion, it cannot be used by individuals to fulfill their obligation to recite Shemona Esrei, except if they are unable to read themselves. So, l'chora, Chazar Sashatz was instituted for people who didn't know how to read Hebrew, so they needed someone to read it for them. So, if you knew how to read, the Chazar Sashatz doesn't help you. But Rabbi Gamliel holds that the Shliach Tzibur can fulfill the obligation of anyone through the Chazar Sashatz. Following a lengthy discussion of machlokas, the Gemara in 34b indicates that the halacha follows the Chachamim on most days of the year, except for Rosh Hashanah every year, and Yom Kippur of the Yobel year. The Turim Beis Yosef summarize the discussion in the Mishnah and Gemara and conclude that the Shliach Tzibur may only fulfill the obligation of one who cannot read, yet understands the meaning of the words he hears. So he has to understand, he can't read, but he has to understand Hebrew. If he doesn't understand what the Chazar, what the Shatz is saying, he can't be Yotze either. So Beis Yosef says in his commentary on the Torah, "Ulachar shesimu atzibur tfilosim, yachzer shliach tzibur atfilah." The Sof Rosh Hashanah, at the end of Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Tanan, it learned in the Mishnah, Geshem sheshliach tzibur chayiv, kach kol yachid v'yachid chayiv. So the shliach tzibur is chayiv on his own, and each individual is chayiv on his own. Shliach tzibur motzi sarav yivdei choivos. Shliach tzibur can be motzi everyone. Uvikmor Amar Gamliel chacham l'divrechem lama shliach tzibur yored. So Rabbi Gamliel asked the Chachamim, what's the point of the Shliach Tzibur? To be motzi people who don't understand, people who don't read. Just like the shlat is motzi, the ones that are not expert at reading, kach motzi shu baki. V'asiknet Allah Rabbi Gamliel b'bracha shel Rosh Hashanah, v'Yom HaKippurim, that on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the Allah follows Rabbi Gamliel that the shots can be motzi everybody. Aber b'bracha shel Shayim Rosh Hashanah Allah kachachamim that he can't. U'mashra midivrei Rabbeinu, the she'enu baki. What does it mean enu baki? Hainu she'enu yodei lispalel. He cannot read, but he understands. Because Shemeh Ka'oneh works. You have to understand what the guy's saying. If you don't read and you don't understand either, then what does it help you that you're going to hear what the Shliach Tzibur has to say? So it seems from these sources that the primary purpose for the institution of Chazor Sashatz by Chazal was to enable one who could not recite Shemona Esrei himself to fulfill his obligation through listening to the Shliach Tzibur. The Shulchan Aruch accepts this. L'achar shesayimu hatzibur tfilos and yachzor shliach hatzibur tfilo, shem yesh mi she'eino yodeh lispalo yichaven l'mashu oimer. The person who doesn't know how to read should listen to the Shliach Tzibur. The Yotzebo, the Tzarech Oshes Sheyotze B'Tfilah Shliach Tzibur L'Chaven. He has to have kavanah and understand what he's saying. Excuse me. According to this logic, one could argue that in locations where everyone knows how to recite the tfilos, which is true today in many places, perhaps Chazor Shashatz is not necessary for any reason other than then to maintain the original takana, as enactments of Chazal cannot be abolished in most cases. Nevertheless, even today, there are many shuls where Jews with little background come to shul on a regular basis, and the enactment of Chazor Sashatz may be beneficial for those people. In addition, the Piskei Tshuvos summarizes a number of other important benefits presented by the Achronim for Chazor Sashatz, which apply today, even where everyone is familiar with the Tefillah. Anshe Knesset Hagdolah shetiknu Chazor Sashatz. This is a very early takana by the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. Gam kidei lomar kedusha. So one of the reasons is that we could say kedusha. L'kai mitzvos v'nigdashti b'soch bnei Yisrael. V'gam k'dei la'anus moedim sheyesh b'zeh mitzvah. And to allow to respond to the shots telling us to say moedim, so we do the moedim through a public vehicle, because we say moedim by ourselves. V'od tam nemer b'chazor sashatz afilu b'zman hazeh shekulam b'kim lispalal. So why do we do it today when everyone is expert? There are people that when they daven their own silent Shemona Esrei, don't have the proper kavanah. The ikar tefillah kavanas alev. And the whole point of davening is having the right intent. Ubifrat bebichas avos. Shakavana liikuva, the first bracha that goes until magin avos. There, if you don't have kavana, then the whole thing goes away. It means liikuva means it makes the Shemona Esrei not valid for you. So if you didn't have kavana in the rest of Shemona Esrei, it's okay. It's not ideal, but you get credit. But if you don't have kavana in the first bracha, you lose everything. So this is an important concept. By listening to the shots and you have kavana during the shots, that you've gained something as well. What was that? Let's say you didn't have kavan. You know that you were thinking about other things during the first Shemona Esrei. So now you say, okay, I'm going to have kavana during the shots. Now, especially in the first bracha, you'll be able to redeem your Shemona Esrei if you have kavana. So it's valuable to us to learn this halacha. So at least during the first bracha that the Shatz says, we should be very careful with kavana. To have our own kavana to be yotzei. Rav Soloveitchik in Igros Hagrid develops a further explanation for the significance of Chazar Sashatz, aside from the Shliach Tzibur, fulfilling the obligation of tefillah for those who cannot recite it. Din Amida v'Aniyas Amen. The fact that we're we stand. L'chora for Rav Soloveitchik, it's pashut that you should stand during the shots, because he connects it to the Aniyas Amen. Hu midin shel tefillah k'dei lotzes b'tefillas tashliach hatzibur. It's part of the halacha for the person to fulfill your obligation for tefillah. Achen mevur dafilu elu shekvar ispalu b'lakash. So those that already daven the silent Shemona Esrei, chayavin bezeh, they're chayiv in the shots. V'hu mishum de'etzem takonos chazor shots nemar, l'chol hatzibur chayavin lishmoa. So the entire tzibur has to be praying. It's not just the shots. We have to be praying with them and listening. V'hainu. Mishum de'etzem tfilas hashliach tzibur chala l'gabi kol hatzibur. D'shezeu etzem takonos chazor satfila. It's not like people think, oh, it's the shliach tzibur. No, it's all of us. The lo rak hashliach tzibur mispalal, ela de kol hatzibur mispalali. We are davening with them. Ki yeshtei chaloisei shem shel tefillah nemru b'tzibur. He wants to say here a new concept. There's two dinim in tefillas hatzibur. Number one, tefillas balachash. Remember we said that it's not a tefillas b'tzibur unless you have at least 10 people davening silently. Instead, you could start with 6. That's a kula. But meikar adin, you want 10. So what Rav Soloveitchik is saying is, there are two aspects of tefillas hatzibur. One is that 10 of us say the Amida side. I could be at home saying that, but the silent davening that you say at home in your own room is different than the silent davening that you did in shul with 10 people. The silent Amida is also a ger of tefillah b'tzibur. Then there's a second type, tefillah b'kol ram shel hashliach tzibur. Ushteim hem akiyum u'kol hatzibur. They're both a kiyum of the mitzvah of the tzibur that they have on themselves to daven b'tzibur. It is the tefillah b'tzibur is accomplished through 2 vehicles. One is by 10 of us davening Shemona Esrei silently, and by 10 of us listening to the shliach tzibur reciting it b'kol ram. That's not how most people, I think, understand this whole concept.
Can I tell you an early memory that I have from childhood growing up?
Can everyone hear Bernie? Here, Bernie, loud.
As a child, I lived on the west side of Manhattan, and we davened in the shul called the Moria, where Rav Yosheber's brother, Rav Aaron, was the Rav. But on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Rav Yosheber would come back and would daven, and with
His brother.
his brother, and it would daven Nila. He stood during the entire davening, because it was all basically like Musaf is all Chazaras shots, repetition, and it would be standing for like 2 hours, and it made a huge impression.
Right.
That, yeah.
Right. So Rabbi Spurka, my Rebbe, he did the same thing. I remember in high school, because he used to daven in that gold room minion where I was, me and Sammy Mark with about tefillah. And he wasn't necessarily a Talmud of Rav Soloveitchik, but I saw him do the same thing. According to Rav Soloveitchik, Chazaras Hashatz is designed to be a communal tefillah of the tzibur, represented by the Shliach tzibur. This is the reason why it is preferable to stand, according to the Ramah, and why the entire tzibur must listen to the repetition and actively participate by reciting Amen. In addition to the reasons given above for the importance of Chazaras Hashatz, the Kaf HaChaim is a Sephardic posek from about 100 years ago, presents a number of mystical sources based upon the Arizal that indicate that Chazaras Hashatz has a greater spiritual level than the silent Shemona Esrei. Ze'elufi apshat. V'yadua shekol divrei Chazal afal pi sheyesh behem sodot niflaim, even though all the words of Chazal have secrets, ein megala nosam. They didn't always reveal them. Umabishim osam k'divrei apshat. Chazal covered the deeper meanings by a simple explanation. Aval bimei Rabbeinu ha'arizal nitna rishus legalos. One of the aspects of the avoda of the Arizal in Tzfat in 1500, with the circle of Rabbanim that were around him, was that he revealed various sodos. The Gila HaSod Shel HaChazar Shema'alta Yoter Gdula Min HaLachash. He said that the spiritual level of Chazaras Hashatz is greater than the silent Shmona Esrei, but Shnayim Choyva, both are obligatory. Kimavur b'shar hakavonos drush echad Chazaras Hamida. That's the Shar Kavonos in his explanation regarding the repetition of the Amida. Who creates Chaim Shar Chazaras Hamida, Yuyin Sham, Lachen Arizal v'Chazaras Hashatz Haya Otsemeinav. The Arizal during the repetition of the Shmona Esrei would close his eyes. V'shomea u'mitzkavin l'divrei hashatz, would listen carefully with kavana. V'lachein ein levatel chazor b'shum pam. It should never not be skipped. Shach v'sumusav mincha l'davka b'makam deika oinus. Lachein kosav ben ishchai. If there is some accident or something that, but otherwise it should never be missed. So based upon these considerations, being present for and listening quietly to Chazaras Hashatz is extremely important, should not be denigrated anyway. And we're going to see in the continuation of the Shir, it requires the entire tzibur to refrain from engaging in other activities during this time. As mentioned above, one of the primary components of the Shatz is the recitation of Kedusha. The Tur mentions the recitation of Kedusha in the source below, and notes that the text of the opening sentence of Kedusha differs from Ashkenazim and Sfardim. And Ashkenazim who pray Nusach Sfard, like the Hasidim. Let's look at the footnote here. Nusach Sfard was first conceived at the time of the beginning of the Hasidic movement, where Hasidim who were Ashkenazim, like in Poland and Russia, right, where the Hasidic movement took off, began to use Nusach Sfard. This new Nusach includes some important additions and changes to Nusach Ashkenaz, based upon the practices of the Arizal. With regard to the issue that's being discussed, Nusach Sfard follows the text of the Sephardic version of the first line of Kedusha, which begins with Nakdishach v'naritzach for Shachris, right? We say Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam. The Sephardim say Nakdishcha v'naritzcha. For Musaf, right, we say Naritzcha v'Nakdishcha, and they say Keser.
Ernie,
Yes,
And-
yes, Walter.
what we're learning now, a Heiche Kedusha on Mincha would not be seem to be allowed.
Remember, we did learn that Heiche Kedusha is not allowed except in extreme circumstances.
Yeah, because
We learned that.
Yeah, I know we learned that, but this is even more of an indication that
Because you see because you're seeing the value of the shots.
that's
Yeah. And that goes back as to why they very extremely limited the utilization of Heiche Kedusha. Remember, we said if, let's say there's not enough time, let's say Shkia is 2 minutes away. So you're not gonna be able to finish your Shmona Esrei before Shkia, and you're not gonna have Mincha. So there they said, V'shas Atchak, you can do it. Right? That was pretty much the only thing they said that you could allow to do it.
You were not in the basic Knesset also.
We said it was easier. So the Tur says, Lachar Shisayim Bracha Shniya, right after Machayim Mesim, Yomer Nagdish Chav Naritzach, V'yanu Achrav Kedusha, and everybody answers the Kedusha. The Oimrim Ba'ashkenaz Nusach Acher, V'zeu Nekadesh Hashimcha Ba'olamecha, Keshem Shmagdishim also B'Shmei Marom, V'chein Kasuv Ayudei V'karzel Zev Amar. A little different than the real Ashkenazic Nusach. V'yesh po Yud Daled Tevois, Kemo sheyesh b'posuk v'kora zeh el zeh. There are 14 words, just like the number of words in the pasuk of the Kara Zel Zeh. The Beis Yosef infers from the Tur's language that the Tzibur does not recite the first sentence of the Kedusha together with the Shliach Tzibur. Rather, the Shliach Tzibur recites it alone. Says Rav Yosef Karo, Nira midivei Rabbeinu the Tur, she'ena Tzibur oimim min hachazan nagdishcha, ela shoiskin, umechadnin l'masha Shliach Tzibur oimer, ucheshemagi kadosh az yanu v'yomer kadosh. So that's what the Beis Yosef says. The Rosh explains that the reason for this is that just like for Kaddish, where the Tzibur must listen to the Chazan and then respond with the line, Yehesh M'Rabanan, so to Kedusha, they must first listen to the Chazan recite the beginning of the Kedusha, and the words Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh serve as the response. Just like we respond in Kaddish, Yehesh M'Rabanan Mavoirach, we should not say Nagdish Chav Naritzach or Nekadesh, but we should just answer Kakasu. We should just answer Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. But we'll see, the way we practice a little different. By the way, it's interesting. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Chazan says Kakasu v'ayad nevi, yet we don't say Nekadesh. There we follow this, where we don't say Nekadesh, and we begin by Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. Because as a Chazan, we're taught Kakasu v'ayad nevi v'karazel zeviyamar. There is no Naritzcha v'nagdishcha. There's the piyut of El Orach Din, and then we say the introductory phrase, and then Kakasu v'ayad, and then we begin with Kodesh Kodesh. Let's see how this got developed. The Rosh says the Gam Davar Pashu Shein Lomer Kaddish Im HaChazan. We don't start with Naritzcha or Nekadesh. Keinamim Kaddish El Basara. The Tzarech Lavin LaChazan Ulanos Amen. Yesh M'Rabanan. So just like by Kaddish, the Chazan says Yiskadav Yiskadav Shmei Rabba, and then we answer, let us be Makadesh. What do the words V'nagdishach v'naritzach mean? It's a lashon nifal. He's basically asking, let us all sanctify, and let us all elevate. And we respond, Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. And the Shulchan Aruch rules that way. The Mishnah Berurah writes that some are lenient and do recite the first sentence with the Shliach Tzibur, though it is more correct to follow Shulchan Aruch's ruling. Despite this, the Mishnah Berurah writes that the common practice is to recite it together with the Shliach Tzibur, like we do. Yesh makilin shichal lomar mashatz. However, aminig anachon kamo shekos v'Shulchan Aruch, not to do it. Ki imo nimshach achronim v'chein noag agra. Mikol makom aminig b'yameinu shoyim makal gam kin nekadish. He says today the minig is to do it. The Yalkut Yosef also writes that the common custom amongst Sephardim is for everyone to recite the first section of Kedusha, and the custom as a basis to rely on. Mashanogim shekol akal oimim b'kol ram uvenigun et nusacha Kedusha nagdishach v'naritza v'oinim kodesh kodesh achash le'ach tzibur yesh min agzal ma lismach. You have to rely on v'chein poshet minig b'chol ha'makoyim, and that's the minig today. So even though this ruling contradicts that of the Shulchan Aruch, the Yalkut Yosef notes that the Shulchan Aruch himself rules in Siman 109 that the tzibur may recite the entire text of the Kedusha quietly. Moreover, those who recite the entire first section of Kedusha base themselves on the approach of the Arizal in the Shara Kavanas. Ukvar he'ir achronim medivrei moran the Siman Kuf Tes shekosav she'ima yachid matchil yitpalel lemashliach tzibur kshyagim ol nagdishcha oimer imo milo mimo kol hakdusha. You should say word for word, Kamoshu Oimer. V'maimer Mordechai Kosav liyashev divrei moran. He tried to reconcile the Shulchan Aruch. The B'simin Kuf Chafei lo shalal ela shelo yomer hatzibur b'kol ram. He said not to do it, but he said don't recite it with a full voice. You could do it quietly. Varizal b'shar kavonas kosav shetzarech loimer et kol nusach hakedusha ima shliach tzibur mila b'mila ushtei atevos nagdisha v'naritzach yomer b'kol ram. Those two words you should say out loud. V'ashar b'lachash. The efshar demasha kosav the shar atevos yomer b'lachash is lovely ikuva kor. It's not to say that you don't get credit. B'chol ikr kavnosa shetzarech loimer v'davka shtei atevos nagdisha v'naritzach b'kol ram. He wants you to say the first two words aloud. According to Arizal, the tzibur recites the entire first section of Kedusha with the Shliach Tzibur, with the first two words being out loud and the rest of it silently, though perhaps reciting the rest out loud is also acceptable. In contrast to the Arizal and Yalkut Yosef, who write that the tzibur recites the section together with the shliach tzibur, the Igros Moshe writes that the shliach tzibur should say the kedusha out loud only after the congregation says it, in order to exempt those people who are still saying the silent Shemona Esrei. Rav Moshe writes that although, as mentioned earlier, the shliach tzibur today does not normally fulfill the obligations of others through his chazar sashatz, in cases like this, he can fill the obligation of others. He's talking about somebody who's still reciting the Shemona Esrei. And if you're silently davening Shemona Esrei and the kahal gets to the Kedusha, so the din is you're supposed to be silent, you're supposed to stop reciting and be mechav and just listen to it. So Rav Moshe is going to write that in that situation, the shatz is moitzi for you, the Kedusha, since you're not reciting it. So that's why everyone should quickly say the Naritzcha themselves, then let the Chazan recite the Naritzcha aloud, because reciting that Naritzcha aloud is being Yotzei for those that are still reciting their silent Shemona Esrei. Let's learn the Igros Moshe. The person who is stuck saying his silent Shemona Esrei, And the din is when the chazan reaches kedusha, he's supposed to be silent. Two, there is a halachic principle that only one voice is heard at a time by Hashem. That's why some have a problem with the choir. That's why the choir sings, but then the chazan should repeat it. Because trei kali lo mishtami, you can't listen to two voices. So if you were davening, the Shatz is davening, Hashem can't hear it. Ubefrat kishekol hatzibur oimrim biyachad, lachen yesh lahanik shashatz yomer hakdusha b'kol ram, achar sheyomer hatzibur ba'atzmo. Means that tzibur should recite the naritzcha, and then the like we do, and then the Shatz does it with a full voice. Kidei sheyishmu elu shoyim be'emtzat tefillah. So that those that are reciting the Shailat Monestre can hear him. If you listen to somebody standing next to you, you're not going to be yotzei. Remember, the shots has to have in mind that he's being motzi other people. So if somebody's standing next to you and he doesn't know that it has to be motzi you, so it's not going to work, and you can't talk to him in the middle of his davening or you're davening. He could be motzi from the shots, even though normally the shots is not motzi because he knows how to read. Since the shots was established to be motzi other people, the shots has in general in his mind that takana shuman melek in iskavin lotsim yesh lechad tzarich lotzes. If there's some need for somebody in the audience to be motzi, the Shatz has that in mind. Afshu any odem yizeh. Even if the Shatz is not aware for it, the whole fact that the takana of shliach tzibur was created, that fulfills it. Then memela, he's covering the people who he has to be motzi. The Igros Moshe also discusses another aspect of reciting the first section of Kedusha that relates to the difference between the various versions. What should one whose tefillah's text differs from that of the tzibur recite? For example, should a Sephardic Jew or one who uses Nusach Sfard, who normally says Nagdishach, that is praying with a tzibur of Ashkenazi Jews who use Nusach Ashkenaz and say Nekadesh, should he recite the Sephardic text or the Ashkenazi text? So let's see what the Igros Moshe says. A person is davening in a shul where there's a different nusach, which is different than what he davens. So Rav Moshe, in his humble opinion, says, he says, certainly the tzibur things, like Kedusha, maybe we'll say Moedim, we'll see, I don't know. But certainly Kedusha here, he should say with the Nusach of the Shul.
Is this the Baltila, or is this somebody?
No, someone who's davening. Someone who's davening.
So Ernie, are you saying that the
Certainly the
Shliach
shot
Tzibur-
has to do with the Nusach of the Tzibur.
so
That's
what?
because he's representing the Tzibur, that's the meaning of the Tzibur. He's talking about somebody davening. So let's say he's normally davening his Nusach Sfard, but he's now in Yavna, right? So
Yeah.
Moshe is saying that he should say Nusach Ashkenaz
As an individual, not as the Shliach Tzibur.
as an individual.
Okay.
It's not the
So he
Shliach.
shouldn't yell out Keser for Kedusha.
Yeah, exactly,
Okay, all right.
exactly. Harold, certainly the shots in
Yeah.
the Ashkenazi shul has to recite Nusach Ashkenaz.
Of course. Okay.
Here he's
Okay.
talking about the person who's in the audience, and he's going to respond to the Kedusha.
Yeah.
So the question is, does he use his own Nusach when he responds, or should he use the Nusach of the shul that he's
The
davening?
Tzibur, right.
So,
Thank you.
so Rav Moshe says he should do the tzibur. Even though he's saying it quietly, he should say the same nusach.
Does that mean that we should not have Siddurim with Nusach Sfard in it? Because some people come and they go right for those Siddurim, so they are doing it differently.
Okay. Well, Rav Moshe made the point, Saul was asking, we have in an Ashkenazi shul, there's a lot of Sidurim with Nusach Sfard, and people dafka take that siddur. You notice what Rav Moshe said, specifically the part that the Tzibur is saying together. Meaning, perhaps Rav Moshe is allowing, for example, the Psukkah de Zimra that is different. So if he's used to saying that different Psukkah de Zimra, that part is not being said by the Tzibur, perhaps that he can do. But he's saying for the Kedusha part, since it's something that the Tzibur does together, he shouldn't vary from the Tzibur. Let's see what he says. Av kashiyomar balach sheyachol lamer nusach achad, hakol amira asad Tzibur shubatz malayachol lamer klal, they don't make Kedusha b'yachid. He's saying this is dependent on the Tzibur. The Tzibur here is Nusach Ashkenaz. So he has to go along with it, because you can't do it without a Tzibur. Right? There's only three parts you have to say. Kadosh, Kadosh, Baruch Kvod, Baruch Shem, Baruch Kvod, Hashem Imkomo, and Yimloch Hashem Lo'olam. That's the other part is not mechuyev for you.
That's even if you say it to yourself and not loud.
Say again.
If the tzibur is repeating the kedusha after the chazan, and he says it to himself.
Well, we say it first. The chazan says the karazel zevi amar. So we say kadosh, kadosh, kadosh.
Okay.
But
you're saying-
lumatzon baruch yomeru. That's the chazan says.
Previously, it said you say the first few words out loud, like kadosh, 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 but not the other, not the rest of that.
No, he said naritzcha v'nakdishcha. You say out loud, and the rest of it you say quietly.
Kadosh, kadosh also.
He didn't say that. Kodesh, Kodesh is our response. No, they said.
Practice, in my opinion, with the phrase, it must be recited with the food or you must use the text in the food.
It's clear cut. I see. Not even, it's not particularly when you're saying it out loud, it's just said whatever you're dominating with, along with the.
You can sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vav Sheker Masha Tzibur Tzrichilom Redusha Rak Kodesh Uvarach V'Yimloch V'Shinui Anuschos Nekadesh or Nagdishcha V'Chadom Rak Kiyuv LaShatz Mikol Mokum L'Menagenu Shoimim HaTzibur Kam Zeh K'Aksovim Shevia Mogen Ovim B'Simen Rabbi Kiva Sham Evi Gam Zeh Makdusha. We recite Lu Masam Baruch Yomeru. That's what they're saying. We say the rest of the. We don't just say Kadosh Kadosh. We say Kavodo. We say all those other parts. That's our practice. And therefore, they're considered part of Kedusha. According to Rav Moshe, since an individual cannot recite Kedusha or other similar parts alone, he must use the text used by the Tzibur for all of it, and not a Nusach Sfard Nusach. The same is true when responding to other Dvarim Shebekdusha, such as Kaddish. This is the generally accepted custom among Ashkenazim. But Rav Ovadia Yosef writes that Sfardim should recite their own Nusach even for Kedusha, despite the Shliach Tzibur using a different Nusach. The Rishonim consider another issue. Okay, so it's machlokes from, well, in general, we in America, Ashkenazim follow Rav Moshe. So, okay. Now, let's talk about Kedusha for somebody in the middle of Silent Shmon Esrei. The Rishonim consider another issue with respect to Kedusha. In the case of one who is still in the middle of his personal Shmon Esrei when the Tzibur reaches Kedusha. Should he stop and listen or continue to pray? The Gemara in Sukkah details the order of reciting Hallel and explains that the principle of Shomer Ka'ona, listening to the recitation from another, is considered as reciting himself, allows one to listen to the Shliach Tzibur recite portions of the Psukim of Hallel and still fulfill his obligation when completing them himself. Hu Omer Baruch haba, v'hein oimrim b'shem Hashem, mikan l'shameh ka'omer. That means there's a pasuk, Baruch haba b'shem Hashem. Let's say he heard the shot say Baruch haba, and he said b'shem Hashem. He was Yotzeif Shomer Ka'ona, the two first words. Rashi employs the principle of Shomer Ka'ona to state that one who is in the middle of the silent Shemona Esrei should listen to the Shliach Tzibur in reciting Kedusha, which is considered equivalent to reciting himself. Rashi says, "Hu Amir Baruch Haba v'Emrim B'Shem Hashem, u'v'derech haba soimchen alav," so they rely on him. Baruch Haba, they relied on him. The ain onin lo atevus atzman v'lo halaluka. They don't have to say anything else. Mikan nilmad l'she'eni yodea lo likros v'lo la'anois. Whoever doesn't know how to read or respond, im shama, as long as he heard and he understood, v'kiven libo lishmo afal pishlo ana yotza. V'chein lemispalim b'tzibur. The same applies davening with the shots. So shliach tzibur omer kaddish or yesh me'rabah. Yishtaku b'tfilasin v'yishmu chavona. You should stop davening your Shemona Esrei. Listen carefully b'kavon. V'arei koinen. And it's as if they said it. Uchshik morak dusha. When the kedusha is finished by the chazan, yachzru l'tfilasin. They should pick up where they left off. V'chein yosad Rav Yudoy Gaon Baal Halachos the Bahag, who lived before Rashi. Rashi mentions that the Bahag, that was his minig. Now, Tosfos disagrees. He writes that if one pauses the silent Shemona Esrei and listens to Shliach Tzibur, it's a hefsek. He's mafsik. If Shemeh is like ka'oineh, is like you said it, well, you're not allowed to speak during Shemona Esrei. Nevertheless, they write that the practice follows Rashi's opinion. Rabbeinu Tam, right, who was Rashi's grandson, V'ri, hayu oirim, the other Rabbi, Shomer Ko'ena Avi Avsokim Shoisei. Komokom Noagom Lishtak Lishmo V'god LaMinig. He says this is an example where the minig is trumps the halachic concept, which L'chora the Bali Tosfos felt it shouldn't work, but the minig is a accepted minig by the public, so they can't go against it. Now, the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah, who also lived in the same time, they lived in Spain, except not in France. Write the name of their teacher, that it is impossible to conclude definitively, like either Rashi or Tosfos, to their greatness. Something that is dependent on the pillars of the world. How do we decide between Rashi and Tosfos? Now, I don't know what the Rabbeinu Yonah is talking about. We have machlokes in Rashi and Tosfos throughout Shas, and we paskin like one of them many times. David Kamar Avad of the Ovid Kamar. Says you can be Yotzed like either one. The Shulchan Aruch, however, rules in accordance with Rashi, which is the common practice. Eino posek l'kadish v'lo l'kedusha. You should be silent when the chazan gets to Kaddish or to Kedusha, and just listen, and it's not considered a hefsek. The Mishnah writes that even though one is silent, it is considered like answering for Kedusha. You get sort of a double whammy here. It's as if you said it, and you said it without a hefsek. Okay. Now, very practical halachas for all of us. What should be the conduct of the tzibur during Chazaras Hashatz? During the Chazaras Hashatz, the rest of the minyan should be paying attention to the recitation and responding amen to the brachos. The poskim also discuss at what point the shliach tzibur should begin his repetition. This is something that has come up in our minyan. The Ramaz understood by the Mishnah Berurah seems to indicate that the Shliach Tzibur may begin as soon as there's a minion listening. That means the Shliach Tzibur plus 9 others. Let's review. We already determined that to start the silent Shmona Esrei, Lechatchila you want 10. B'di'eved 6 works, according to the Minchas Yitzchak. But that he was the only one who said it. The Mishnah Brura, I think it was Moshe was there. That means Lechatchila they wanted 10. Okay. So here it also seems to suggest that the Ramah, the way the Mishnah Brura learns the Ramah, that you also want 10, 9 plus the Shliach Tzibur. The Mishnah Brura though reports that in his time, the custom was to wait for the Morda Asra to finish Mona Esrei. A third approach is brought by Rav Yaakov Emden, the Yavitz, that one should wait for the majority of those who recite every word of Shmona Esrei carefully to finish, even if the tzibur numbers more than 10 people. That means even if you have 9 plus 1, but some of that 9 may not be people who are careful in their words. So what we're saying is the shots should not start, according to anybody, unless there's 9 plus 1. We don't have a heter to start with 6. We have a heter to start with 9, at least that seems to be what we're learning here.
He calls it the majority. He's not saying up to 10. The majority of the Misbah.
No. He should wait for the majority of those who recite every word of Shemona Esrei carefully to finish, even if the tzibur numbers more than 10 people. That's more of a chumrah. We need even more people. No, and you have to know who is careful. Yeah, but that's not shaykh. Yeah, I'm saying that's not practical. What's practical easier is wait for the Mordasra or this issue of 9 plus 1. The Rosh writes that if 9 people are not answering the brachos of the Shliach Tzibur, then there's a serious concern of the brachos being recited in vain. Meaning, not only are you not getting the shliach, not only are you not getting credit for tefillah b'tzibur, you're reciting brachas of atol. The whole purpose of the chazan is to be motzi people who couldn't read. So therefore, everyone has to be quiet and listen. The loimer amen. If there are not 9 people in the shul, they're having kavanah to listen to Shliach Tzibur. Koravu be'inai shebircha Shliach Tzibur levatola. This is the Rosh who says he thinks it's a bircha levatola. Ki niskenu birchas Shliach Tzibur lo'amram basara. Ushein tisha bebeis hakneses amachanu bircha Shliach Tzibur near kivrocha levatola. Kach kol adam yasa atzmo ki ilu ein tisha zu laso v'chavin lebirchas achazon. Everyone should see himself that there's no, without him there's no 9. The concept of asar batlonim, that they were always like koilel, they had koilel yungalite, that were always in shul, that they knew that they were machavein, and that was called the asar batlonim, that they would always be in shul. And that's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. If they're not 9, people should see themselves, without them there's no minyan. The Mishnah Berurah writes that one should be careful not to recite personal petitions or learn Torah during the repetition. I must say that I myself
Don't bring books anymore.
have a problem,
This is
because
setting the bar very high, but maybe in the time of the Mishnah Berurah, people like
Mishnah Berurah is 100 years ago.
of his madrega. We're in a different madrega, unfortunately.
Al Kain Yesh Li Zor Meloimer Al Tachanunim or Lilmod Beis Chazar Sashatz. Vafilu mechavnim, you should not learn during the Shliat Tzibur. Vafilu mechavnim l'sof habracha lanas amen. Even if you had kavanah during amen, shalotia amen yisoma k'mash yisbar gam kein lo yafei moisim shem aloimdim yiftu limudim amen aretz limudu mehan. The people who are unlearned, if they see people learning during shots, and they will not even listen. They'll just do idle talk. So people who learn are being, causing other people to sin. Now, where is the 7 footnote?
At the bottom of the Shulchan Aruch, paragraph, in English.
See volume 10 Shir, where the apparent contradiction between Shulchan Aruch here and 755, where one who is sleeping is counted in the minyan is discussed, and 3 resolutions are brought. According to 2 of them, ideal at least 9 men answer to the Shliach Tzibur and the Chazar Hashatz, while according to the 3rd, the practical halacha is that only 6 are required. So there is a shita that's only as long as we have 6, that may be enough. And Amen Yisom is a term used for responding Amen when one did not hear the bracha that preceded it. You shouldn't say an Amen in that fashion. See the Shema Shloma, where Rav Shlomo Amar, former chief rabbi of Israel, and current Sephardic chief rabbi of Jerusalem, writes that studying Torah is forbidden during Chazaras Hashatz, even in places where everyone is learned, and no concern exists that an uneducated person will learn from him. Rav Chaim Kanievsky is quoted as saying that if one reads Shnai Mikra, the weekly parsha during Chazaras Hashatz, he does not fulfill his obligation. The Shulchan Aruch records a mitzvah to read the weekly parsha every week, twice from the text, once from the Aramaic translation of English or Rashi. You wouldn't be yotz if you did it during the Chazaras Hashatz. Lachein, im Korish Shnai Mikra v'echad targum Chazaras Hashatz, Kosav Agoin Rav Chaim Kanievsky, the Efshar Shafilu B'Yevid Lo Yotzei Dei Choyva. It's a mitzvah accomplished by sinning, and he won't have success in his learning. The Mishnah Berurah cites the Shulchan Shlomo suggesting that if a Chazan is concerned that there will not be 9 people answering him, he should recite the repetition on the condition that if 9 people are not answering, it should be considered a personal voluntary tefillah. Nearly the Shat should make his own personal t'nai. That if 9 people are not going to answer, it should be a voluntary nedava. The Piskei Tshuva has even more extreme words to say about one who talks during the tefillah. He explains that the Shulchan Aruch, citing Rabbeinu Yonah, refers to talking during Chazaras Hashatz as a sin that is too great to bear. That's called Gadol Avono Minso. That the Shulchan Aruch says that someone who talks during Chazaras Hashatz is a sin too great to bear, because this causes the tefillah of the entire tzibur not to be accepted. In addition, the Piskei Tshuva recommends not coming to shul at all, rather than talking during the tefillah.
Would be empty.
Michumros avono agno minso. Why is this? Why did the Shulchan Aruch say that a person who talks during Shmona Esrei Chazaras Hashatz, the sin is too great to bear? Not only is his own tefillah not going to be accepted, he's causing that the rest of the people, their tefillah won't be accepted. Person cannot refrain from talking. Shouldn't come to shul. But this is not a, by the way, we have not been learning Hasidic Torah. We're not learning a Belzer Chumrah, or this is the Rosh, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Brura. This is the standard halachas form that we have.
Well,
It's
that's stronger than Dalit maybe Shalom. This is like, you're just ruining it for everybody. Nobody has a.
The sin has no parallel. It's preventing the final redemption. The comic batiknius nachravu ekev avonzeh. I don't know how he knows that, but he says many synagogues have been destroyed because of it. Yigal Rachmana Litzlana Avon Ma'od. Diburim Kolim Lashon Hara, the late Sanois. Many times the talk that is going on is just joking and worse Lashon Hara. V'yeter Seish B'Shabbos V'Yomim Tovim. And on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, not even during the week.
Rabbi ought to do a 3-part series.
Right.
Take this, encapsulate it.
Okay, I'm going to stop here.
Ernie, you sure don't want to keep this kind of stuff? It's
Say it again?
a lot of Musa here, and you sure don't want to skip it.
What did Walter say?
I said there's a lot of Musa over here.
It's actually just halacha. Well, that's what I was saying. We're not learning some kind of Musar Sefer. We're learning Shulchan Aruch and Mishnah Brura.
Didn't even get the cell phones yet.
Yeah, we did. You have to turn them off. And this is the Tzurba. I mean, the Tzurba is halacha. So listen. You in the daily minyan, it's pretty quiet during Shemona Esrei.
In most daily.
I'm saying in our daily minyan, it's quiet. Could be quieter, but it's usually quiet during our Shemona Esreis.
Shabbos is tough.
Yeah, Shabbos and Yom Tovim are the problem. But you see, it's a kavachomer. Shabbos Yom Tov is even worse. Okay. Any other comments?
Go ahead, thank you. Right.
Shkoyach, good night.
Everybody.
Good, thank you.